Hi Alex, so what else have you been involved in at Deloitte outside of your client work that you've been passionate about?
Okay, so actually I've been involved with, I guess, quite a few things over the years, and there have been a few of those years um, in and around kind of client work. And there are four that I'll sort of mention now. One that you'll probably all say is very boring, but I actually think has been a big help to my career, was doing the Chartered Accountancy qualification. So I did that in the first 3 years of my career at Deloitte, and I'm now a chartered accountant. Not many people know that, so you have to keep that secret. Next on the list, and perhaps a bit more conventionally now, is a secondment. I went on a secondment that was initially meant to be for 6 months, but became just over a year, back in 2001 and 2. And that was a secondment at the Cabinet Office on Whitehall, and it's where I developed my passion for the public sector. Some of you will know about the Ingeus joint venture. This is a deal that Deloitte did a couple of years ago now with a company called Ingeus. They are a welfare to work company. They help unemployed people get back to work. And they have won a lot of contracts with the Department of Work and Pensions under something called the Work Programme. And cutting a long story short, Deloitte formed a joint venture with Ingeus, a 50-50 deal with them. And I was involved from day one right up to implementation of the new Ingeus contracts, and I'll say more about that later. And actually, looking back on my career, that was probably one of the highlights. And then finally, fourth one, lastly, I have been for a very long time and still am a mentor for the Prince's Trust under their business mentoring scheme. That is something that Deloitte used to promote. We don't really promote it anymore, but I've continued anyway, and I find it kind of very valuable, and it helps me keep life in perspective.
Thank you. So why did you decide to get involved in all of these? Was it just through passion, or was it you knew it would be good as something extra to your career, or?
It's difficult to know why. I think it was intuition, really. Certainly when I went on the secondment, I had been a scholar, so I had worked with the firm in my gap year, as well as the first 3 years doing the Chartered Accountancy qualification that I mentioned. And I knew I wanted to do something different for a while. I felt I'd been, even though I was still pretty young then, I felt I'd been with the firm for a long time because of the scholarship scheme. I had always been interested in politics, and I'll talk more about the how in a moment. But one thing led very rapidly to another, and it was great. So it was partly because I kind of wanted to do something different. I guess I've just had a philosophy all the time, and this is, maybe one of the hints and tips for later, that the most successful people in Deloitte are those who are quite broad-minded and have many strings to their bow, and are able to have conversations with their clients, and I guess the guys in Deloitte too, that are kind of more multi-dimensional. And I think if you can bring some different experiences and stories to bear to the kind of stuff you do with your clients, you'll be very successful. Funnily enough, I think the chartered accountancy thing, I think a lot of people in P&P think it's just not relevant, and kind of on one level it isn't. I don't really do accounts or look at fixed assets or anything like that in my day-to-day life in P&P, but understanding the kind of numbers behind a business, even in the public sector, is really useful, and it gives you a little edge of credibility with senior clients. So I think the answer to the why question for me is, I think the more dimensions you can have as a kind of individual, the better. But clearly there's a balance. I think if you do too many of these other things, then you don't develop the core skills that the senior guys kind of know and love and expect all our people to have. So you've got to do enough core stuff to be good at that. But I think kind of too much is dangerous because you get a bit narrow.
How do you strike the balance between the core stuff and the extra stuff and still have time in your life?
For me, I think you have to take the long-term view on these things. For whatever reason, I'm kind of passionate about the firm, and I've always known, unless something goes terribly wrong, I'm going to be here for the rest of my life, and I've been here since I was very young. So I think that it's difficult to get the balance kind of in any particular moment. You're either all on a client, or you're all on some PD or a bid or whatever it might be. And I think the same applies to these other opportunities. When you're on secondment, you're on secondment. Although, by the way, I think it's very important to maintain your links with the firm when you're kind of off on secondment. But if you kind of look at it over a period of time, a long period of time, let's say 3/4 of the time you're doing traditional stuff, core stuff, and 1/4 of the time doing some of these other things, something like that feels about right. But obviously, in any particular day, you'll be doing one or the other.